Hello students, this is your teacher McKenroe, and I hope that you all are doing great over there at home. Last class I taught you the first part of the poem named A Legend of the Northland, right? Yeah, and that is the beautiful work of Phoebe Cary. Let me just recap that what we had done in the last class. I taught you, and actually I narrated the entire story of the poem. There were 8 stanzas that I had dealt with. In that one, Saint Peter, let me just summarize or just recap the last one, the last class, which I took up in the first part. There we saw that Saint Peter had gone for preaching all over the globe. And then while he is outside for preaching, he just stopped to one place, and when he stopped, there was this cottage where he went, and there was this lady, a woman inside this cottage who was making cakes. And then when Peter got inside the cottage, she asked that woman to provide him some piece of cake. Why? Because Saint Peter did not eat for a long time. So she requested the woman to give him some cake or just a small piece of that. But that woman, since that woman was greedy and selfish, she did not want to give, but somehow she was making smaller part of that, smaller portion of that cake. So let's just continue with the next stanza. Then she took a tiny scrap of dough and rolled it flat and baked it thin as a wafer, but she couldn't part with that. As I told you, she had made it twice in the last stanza and in the last class. And again she was thinking that the cake that she made at that time was actually bigger in size. Since she is a selfish lady and a greedy one, so definitely she didn't want to give a single piece of that actually. Whenever she was preparing, it appears to be bigger in size. So that happened twice. This is the third time and the third attempt. Okay. She took a tiny scrap of dough. You know what is dough? See, let me just tell you, the pronunciation of that one is dove. Okay, dove. It's not duff or something like that. It's not duff, it's dove. Okay, so you must have had this. Okay, donut. It's called donut. It's made of bread. All right. So what this woman did, she took out a tiny piece of that dough just to make another cake, another piece of cake for Saint Peter. Saint Peter was actually watching everything, that what this woman is up to. At first, when she prepared it, she was saying that it's bigger in size. And again, when she prepared it for the next time, that was the second time, again, it appeared to be bigger in size to her. And this was the third attempt. She took out the tiny scrap of that dough, okay, and she rolled it. She rolled it that much that it became flat. Why? She wanted to make it smaller, more smaller, so that it could be given to Saint Peter. Just a small part of it should be given to Peter. That is actually her target. okay, and baked it thin as a wafer, but she couldn't part with that. She was trying to bake it as smaller as the size of wafer. You must have seen those wafers, right? They are thin, but yet whenever you are eating them, it's not going to help you a lot. Fine. Let's move on to the next stanza number 10. For she said, my cakes that seem too small when I eat of them myself, and yet too large to give away, so she put them on the shelf. See what she did? She made that, okay, from the dough, actually. From the portion of the dough, she made it, and then it appeared to bigger in size to that woman. And what she did, she took the piece of cake and she put it on the shelf. How rude, right? She was preparing cake for St. Peter, and St. Peter was watching everything that was happening around. And then this made St. Peter really furious. Okay, let's just find out in the next stanza number 11. Then good St. Peter grew angry, for he was hungry and faint. And surely such a woman was enough to provoke a saint. Of course, St. Peter, who traveled around the globe, and then definitely he was hungry. He was actually needing something to eat. And then when he stopped to one particular place where he thought that he is provided something to be eaten, but it appeared to be a greedy woman who was preparing cake but not giving to St. Peter. And because of that, St. Peter became furious. And then she said something to that woman. And what he told to that woman, let's just find out in the next stanza. Stanza number 12. And he said, you are far too selfish to dwell in a human form, to have both food and shelter and fire to keep you warm. St. Peter told that woman, you are not fit to be a human being. How could you do that? You know that well that I am a saint. I am here for preaching. And yet, I just have asked you a piece of that cake, but due to your selfishness and as you are greedy, you never wanted to give me the piece of that cake. So, are you a human being? If a person is hungry, people used to provide them food because they are having something called humanity in them. You don't have that. You are not fit to be a human being. And again, what he said again? To dwell in a human form. Yes, you are not fit to be a human being. To have both food and shelter and fire to keep you warm. Now, the thing is that whatever I am going to do to you, that will make you regret about what you have done to me. So let's see what St. Peter is going to do with this woman. I'm just asking you, okay? Just asking. What do you think that what Peter is going to do with this woman? Kill her? Option number 1. Curse her? Option number 2. Or beat her? Option number 3. So, just decide. What do you think? Okay, let's just find out in the next stanza, all right? Stanza number 13. Now you shall build as the birds do, and shall get your scanty food, by boring and boring and boring all day in the hot, dry wood. Okay. That was the height of misery, and that was the height of anger of Saint Peter. The second option, yes, Saint Peter cursed the woman, and he cursed her into a bird, a woodpecker. Woodpecker is the name of a bird which has the strength of making hole onto the tree actually. Okay, it could make a big hole and then it would find a food. Repeat, it would find food. It does that because it wants to find food. All right, so this woman was turned into a woodpecker by Saint Peter, and shall get your scanty food, and shall get your scanty food. Saint Peter further told her that you will get scanty food. That means small amount of food you will be getting to eat. That will be the moment that you will realize that what you had done to me today. This was actually, the statement of Saint Peter, of course, to the woman. By boring and boring and boring all day in the hard, dry wood. See, as I told you, what this woodpecker does, as they are having the sharp beak, so they can make holes. Okay, so Saint Peter cursed her to do that. To do what? To make that pit, to make that hole in that wood of a tree. Okay, so that's what happened. And that bird, or say that woman, was completely astonished and couldn't do anything, as it was already told by Saint Peter, and Saint Peter is a saint, right? So that curse was not supposed to be taken back. Okay, let's move on to the next stanza. Stanza number 14. Then up she went through the chimney, never speaking a word, and out of the top flew a woodpecker, for she was changed to a bird. Yes, this is just the one which I just told you right now. She flew away from the chimney and didn't utter a word. Of course, how could she do that? She was a bird now, right? She was a woodpecker. So that was the reason she just flew. And she flew away. Okay, move on to the next stanza. Okay, let's move on to stanza number 15. She had a scarlet cap on her head, and that was left the same, but all the rest of her clothes were burned, black as a coal in the flame. Okay, at that moment, when she was turned into a bird by Saint Peter, she was wearing a cap, a scarlet cap. Scarlet is actually the color, and she was wearing that cap at that time when she was a human being. In that kind of birds, woodpecker, you will find a red color of something like cap on the top of their head. Okay, and that was left the same, but all the rest of her clothes were burned, black as coal in the flame. But what she was wearing, they were turned into flames. They were completely burnt. Okay, and she couldn't say anything for herself as she flew, and then through the chimney she went outside and she disappeared. Okay, move on to the next stanza. That is going to be the last stanza of this poem, stanza number 16. And every country schoolboy has seen her in the wood, where she lives in the trees till this very day, boring and boring for food. Yeah, this is actually the last stanza, as I told you. Now many students or many school boy or school children used to see this kind of birds there. In the countryside, they used to see such kind of birds flying. And what this bird will be doing? She keeps digging into the wood just to find some food for herself. And whenever these young children ask their parents or folks that why this bird is doing like that, the parents and those elderly people, they used to tell them, those young children, about the story of this bird, that how this bird was turned into a bird by Saint Peter. It was a human being as a woman, but since she was selfish and greedy, so just because of that, Saint Peter turned her into a bird. Okay, this is the entire story of this poem, A Legend of the Northland. Now let me just give you the summary. Okay, the poem is a legend about an old lady who angered Saint Peter because of her greed. The story goes on like this. One day Saint Peter was preaching around the world and reached the door of a cottage where this woman lived. She was making cakes and baking them on a hearth. Saint Peter was fainting with hunger. He asked the lady to give him a piece of cake. The cake that she was baking then appeared to be too big, so she did not give him that, and instead she baked another smaller one. See, this is the entire story, right? That also appeared to be big, so she did not give him that one. The second time she baked yet another smaller cake, but found it to be big to give away. In the third attempt, she took an extremely little scrap of dough, as I mentioned already, okay, and rolled it flat. She had it as thin as a wafer, but was unable to part with that also. How greedy she was, right? And that's why it served her right that she has been turned into bird. This angered Saint Peter a lot. He said that she was not fit to live in human form and enjoy food and warmth. He cursed her and transformed her into a woodpecker bird who had to bore in hard, dry wood to get its candy food. She can be seen in the trees all day boring and boring for food. She is doing it all the time in search of food. Okay, now the next part is actually the question and answer part. I want you to take the snapshot of those questions and answer as well. It's going to help you, and if you may write them down. I don't think so that you will be able to, so but just do that thing right now. Take up your mobile phone and have the snapshot. Fine, let me just read the first question for you. Which country or countries do you think the Northland refers to? The answer is, the Northland refers to the region around the North Pole which is extremely cold. It could be any country like Russia, Canada, Greenland, Norway, etc. Okay. Second question, what did Saint Peter ask the old lady for? What was the lady's reaction? And the answer to that is, Saint Peter asked the lady to give him a cake as he was hungry. The lady did not give him a cake out of the ones that she had baked. Instead, she baked a smaller one for him. Question number 3. How did he punish her? How did he punish her? He punished the selfish lady by turning her into a woodpecker bird that had to bore into the dry wood all day to get some food and shelter. Moving to the next question. How does the woodpecker get her food? The woodpecker gets food by boring holes in the wood. Question number 5. Do you think that the old lady would have been so ungenerous if she had known who Saint Peter really was? What would she have done then? If the old lady knew who Saint Peter was, then she would not have been ungenerous. On the other hand, she would have served him well for the fulfillment of her greedy desires. Question number 6. Is this a true story? Which part of this poem do you feel is the most important? It is not a true story. The point of the story where the woman is turned into a woodpecker bird is the most important. This is so because the punishment teaches everyone the lesson to be generous. Yeah, this is actually the motto of this poem. Okay? It's not a true story, by the way, but actually it teaches us that how we have to be as a human being. We have to be generous. We have to help each other. Whenever someone comes to you who is needy or who is in need, help him or her. And if he or she is hungry, that is a great help that you would do. Just give them some food to eat. Move on to the next question. What is a legend? Why is this poem called a legend? A legend is a popular story from the past which is believed to be true but cannot be verified. It contains a moral which is narrated to the children to teach them moral values. Yes, it's for you kids. We have to learn to help people who are in need, who are not well-to-do also. You have to take a step and help them to provide food if they don't have anything to eat. Move on to the next question, which is actually question number 8, the last one. Write the story of a legend of Northland in about 10 sentences. I think you can do it on your own, but if you want, you could write that one, or else just take out your mobile phone and then have the snapshot of that. Fine. Grammar exercises. Let's look at the words at the end of the second and fourth lines, which snows and clothes, true and you, below and no. We find that snows rhymes with clothes, true rhymes with you, and below rhymes with no. Find more such rhyming words. The rhyming words in the poem are, now you can just have a look. Now you can have a look on the screen. Few, true, earth, earth, done, one, lay, away, flat, that, myself, self, faint, shade, form, warm, food, wood, word, bird, same, flame. Okay, those are actually the rhyming words which are found in that poem. I hope, kids, that you have understood the motto of this poem, that how you have to be. You are a human being, right? So you need to help people who are actually in need. Don't be selfish and don't be so greedy and miser at the same time. Be a good human being, always. Okay, let me call it a day, and I shall meet you in the next class with a new lesson and the new moral values that I will be sharing with you. And of course, stay back home, all right? And keep up your good health. Hashtag stay safe, stay healthy, and Godspeed.